What up, nerds? I'm Bammed, and this is CTF and Cigars by BAM CTF. So what are we doing here? Well, if you don't know me, I work with Perch Security, and over the past few years, not just with Perch, but with other employers as well, I've been involved in several CTFs. Not necessarily the guy competing, but the guy organizing the CTF and putting it together, building challenges, that sort of things. So several people have asked me to do this, so I've decided to go ahead and do it. I'm going to be providing some additional content over the next few weeks, and we'll see what happens from there. Going through some CTFs that I've put together, doing some walkthroughs. I've got some guests who are coming on. We're going to be doing some crack me's. And while we're at it, since it's me, and if you know me, this is just who I am, I'm going to go ahead and light up a cigar. Maybe talk about that just briefly, and then we'll look at some CTF stuff. So this week I've got it's an Oliva Protege Connecticut Robusto. So it's a 50 gauge. See that? About 5 inches long. So it's got a Connecticut wrapper. This is it's a nice little sort of everyday cigar. I'm going to start by just kind of toasting the foot here, getting that warmed up, and then we'll light it up. So these, according to the Oliva marketing, these are cigars that are rolled by their trainees. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but because of that, they actually sell these pretty cheap. I got 40 of them for only $58. They're nice and smooth. They're a mild to medium body. They produce quite a bit of smoke. They burn nice evenly all the way through. Just a little peppery, a little bit of caramel, cherry, just general a nice, well-rounded cigar. So yeah, I'm going to smoke this while we look at CTF stuff. So this week, I'm going through BSides Houston 2020. So we did this about 2 weeks ago. Myself and some of my coworkers from Perch Security, we put the CTF together, hosted by Houston BSides. And I've had a lot of people wanting some write-ups, walkthroughs. I don't think I've seen any posted yet, so that's what we're going to be going through. So let me log into Cali. All right. So BSides Houston 2020, we did this September the 5th. Just a bit of a walkthrough overview of the challenges that we did. So the basic premise is that you have been invited to join Foo Society. Not F Society, Foo Society. It's completely different. Foo Society has a grudge against Evil Corp. And they want you to help bring Evil Corp down. So you are asked to go to evilcorp.com and find all of their secrets. So that is the basic premise. Let's take a look and see what we can find. Here. All right, so first of all, we can actually just pull up their webpage. So evilcorp.com, they've got a webpage, very basic, nothing's going on here. Let's start doing our recon. So if you've ever been involved in a CTF or penetration testing, the first thing you need to do is some recon. So we've got a website, we've got a domain name. Let's see if we can find out what else is associated with this site. So we'll do some DNS Recon, and we'll also do some directory brute forcing to try to find some what other things might be hosted on the site rather than just that empty V page. Now, to make things easier and shorter for this walkthrough, rather than sitting around and waiting for an hour or whatever it might take, I've actually shorten my word list that we're using. So we're going to start off using DNS Recon. So DNS Recon is just doing what it says. It's going to do some recon from DNS. We've got our domain name, which is evalcorp.com, and I've got a word list, which is short list. Now, the words that I put in this list are in some of the word lists that come with Kali. So I didn't just pull this out of my hat. Just so you know, if you use the default word list in Kali, you would also get the same results. It would just take longer. And then the technique we're going to be using, we're just going to do a brute force, and we'll run through that real quick. Wow, that was quick. All right, so we found two subdomains. Sorry, I still need my coffee this morning. We've got smtp.evalcorp.com and security.evalcorp.com. So those are two things that we need to check out besides just the evalcorp.com site. And then let's do some directory busting. All right, I don't know why I passed the parameters of that. It's not needed, but yeah, let's pull up Dirbuster or whatever tool that you might be interested in using. We'll put in the domain name, so we got evalcorp.com. And let's browse for our word list. Again, I'm going to use that short word list just to make things run quicker. And let's see what we find. All right, we get two things right off, again, because I'm using a short list. But we've got /mail and /get. So both of these are prime targets for us to look at. So let's take a look at /get first. So we have get t. So it's not GitHub, it's get t. But similar concept. It's just a web interface for you looking at a Get repo. This is a prime target because a lot of things can be found in a Get repo. If we can get access, we can see some of the source code that might be running on the system, and there's always a chance that someone accidentally uploaded some credentials or something like that. All right. So without logging in, I have access to one special project from Tyrell called Project V. Let's take a look at that. Not much here, but if we look at the history, we can actually see the most recent commit removing private key added by accident. So let's see what that is. And looks like Tyrell accidentally uploaded an SSH key to the Get repo. He removed it, but it's still saved in history. So now we have an SSH key to get us initial access into the evalcorp network. All right, so we'll look at that in a minute. Some of the things to take a look at. We have other domain names and sites to look at. So we have security.evalcorp.com. Oh, sorry, I'm still logged in. Oops. At any rate, this is running ZoneMinder. I'll show you in a little bit how I got the password and was able to log into it. ZoneMinder version 1.3.0. So with a little bit of Googling, we can find there's several vulnerabilities for this specific version of ZoneMinder that we can use to get some access to some additional data. And then the last thing that we found was, let's see, evalcorp.com/mail. And so we have a Sql mail login. Okay, so now that we've got some of our targets, so we've got security.evalcorp.com, which is running ZoneMinder, and again, if we do a little bit of research, we can find some vulnerabilities for that. We've got just evalcorp.com, and we've got an SSH key for, we can assume, so this was uploaded by Tyrell, so I'm going to assume that this SSH key belongs to Tyrell, so we'll check that out. We also have smtp.evalcorp.com, which a little more recon would just tell us that's simply the MX record for their DNS. So MX is just the mail exchange. That's just where all the mail gets routed if you send an email to evalcorp.com, which should still be working. I'm pretty sure I left that bit up. And then, of course, the Sql mail server. So those are the targets that we have so far. Let's start off by logging in. I don't need this up anymore. Let's close that out. So I've downloaded the SSH key for Tyrell, and there it is. So let's use that SSH key. I'm going to log in. Let's just try Tyrell at eval, not evilcorp. That's completely different. evalcorp.com. And look, we got access. And there's a flag. So throughout the all these challenges, the flags, I've just put a .flag in a directory. As you get access to that user, you can see the flag in that user's home directory. Oh, and for that key, since we are looking for flags, for that matter, I missed the simple one that almost everybody got. Of course, whenever you're looking at a web page, always check the source. There's a comment, and there is the easy flag. So while we're doing this, let's go ahead and keep track of what we're doing by putting our flags into CTFD. So this is CTFD. This is the system that I'm using for keeping track of scores. I've used it for most of the CTFs that I've done. And I think later on I might do some additional episodes where we'll talk about the actual structure of the CTF and how to set one up. I've had a lot of people asking me about that, so we'll get to that on a later episode here. So all right, so I've got the flag name here. Got the flag. This is easy mode. Let's put that in there. All right. Now let's see what's in Tyrell's directory here. Okay, so we've got Project V. So Project V was the, it looks like somebody's dropped some stuff in here. I reset the servers after the CTF, but I may have left some stuff on. All right, so let's check out this Project V. There's not much in here. There's a README, a license, and then there's this one executable. Let's see if it'll run. All right, it doesn't run. Let's run it with Python. And it's another flag. We can also find this just by running strings. Sorry about the background noise. It's one of the drawbacks of doing this CTFN cigars is I've got to do it outside. All right, either way, we can find our flag. Just, you made it. So in just a few minutes, we found 3 flags, real simple. And I think there were a number of people who found these really quick. Okay, so now we have initial access to a system inside of the evalcorp network. Now that we have initial access, we can do some additional recon as well as work on privilege escalation. So let's see. I'm going to open another terminal. Okay, so privilege escalation 101. There are a number of scripts out there that you can find, and I probably should have pulled up a list. I didn't, sorry. But there's a number of ways you can look for privilege escalation. There's some scripts that a lot of people have written that will look for common privilege escalation techniques. There's a number that revolve around sudo access and what you can do with sudo, as well as the set UID. So if you're not familiar with Linux, You need to be if you're going to do CTFs or pen testing. That's where all the tools are for the most part. And like 80% or more of the internet is running on Linux. Excuse me. But yeah, so setuid is a permission flag for files in Linux. The basic bits or the basic flags for file permissions are read, write, and execute. And then you can set those for the user who owns the file, the group who owns the file, or everybody else. But then there are these extra bits. You've got the setuid, setgid, and the sticky bit, which you don't hear talked about as often. The setuid, essentially what that does is it allows someone else to run an executable file as the owner of that file. So let's find some of those. I'm going to use the find command in Linux to search all the file systems. So I'm going to start with the root directory, so it's just slash, and then I'm going to search for the permission /4000. So that's looking for anything that's got in this case, it's going to be the setuid bit set. I'm going to avoid getting any noise from errors. If I just run this, I'll get a lot of permission denied because right now I'm running as a restricted user. So I'm going to redirect my errors to dev null, and we'll let that run. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and start an Nmap scan. All right, so we're running on a 192.168.0.112/25. So let's just do an Nmap scan on 192.168.0.0/25. If you don't know Nmap, Nmap is just it's a port scanner. It's got some other stuff you can do with some scripts. There's a number of vulnerabilities out there that in previous versions of Nmap that have been interesting. I'm not using any here necessarily, but at any rate, yeah, we're going to do a port scan. So it's going to, first of all, just do a ping sweep to find any hosts that are online and responding, and then it's going to start sending packets out to the most common ports. By default, without any options, it's going to look at the 1,000 most common ports based on a list that it has. Send out some packets, try to establish a connection to see if those ports are open or if they're being blocked by a firewall or if they're just closed. All right, that ran pretty quick, so we've got that. All right, so we'll come back to the port scan. Meanwhile, we've got our results back from find, and these are all of the things that are currently have the setuid bits set. So one of them happens actually to be find itself. So let's look at that real quick. Okay. Sorry about that. My copy paste failed. To paste clipboard. Sorry, not clipboard. In selection. There we go. So the setuid, when it is set, this is how it looks if you just look at using ls to look at the file. First of all, notice it's in red. So setuid can be a major security flaw, especially if the file is owned by root, because without any other restrictions in place, essentially it's allowing you to do root level things. Now, not everything here with the setuid is exploitable, and some of these are actually needed. For example, if you want to mount or unmount. So these are commands for if you wanted to mount a drive onto the system. So if you plugged in a USB drive, or if you had a CD and they had a CD you wanted to, or a DVD that you wanted to insert into a drive and access it, you need to mount it. That's something that a user would want to do. But since you're actually accessing hardware in Linux, you're going to need to be able to do root level things to actually access and do things at the hardware level. So that's why commands like mount, umount need to have setuid set, as well as changing your password. So as a user, you can change your own password, but in order to access the etc shadow file, which has your password, you need root level permissions. So the password command and commands for changing that also will have set UID set. But those commands should have restrictions in place built into them, as well as there's some other protections to prevent you from exploiting those. Now, in this case, the interesting one is find. So find is something you don't normally see running as root. And so there's some fun things we can do with this. So find is a great command. Like I said, we just used it to find files with certain permissions. You can locate files with certain names. You can locate files that were modified or accessed within a certain amount of time, depending on how your system is mounted. And one of the things you can also do once you find something is you can run a script that goes along with it using the exec command. So I'm just going to run find, just give it a path to search through. I don't really care. And then I'm just going to do exec. Let's just run who am I? And then we have to end our script. So part of running exec, you have to tell it when the exec ends. And so we just do that with a backslash semicolon. And for every file it found, it ran, and who am I? The result is root. So while I don't have a bash shell necessarily at the moment, I basically do have an interactive shell, because I can pass -exec whatever command I want, and it's going to run as root. Let's make this a little bit less noisy. I'll just give it the name file. There we go. All right, so same thing. Type that correctly. Who am I? I am root. All right, now I'm not going to do a lot more with this system because that's pretty much all there is to it. This was pretty straightforward as far as root level escalation. There's one more thing to get here, but we'll get to that in a moment. And I mentioned, and this was part of the instructions that I gave during the Houston BSides as well, all the flags are going to be in the user's home directory in a .flag file. So for root, your home directory is /root. So I'm going to use the cat command. Cat will just output the contents of the file. And there we go. I've got root level permission. I could run whatever I want to here. If I want to, establish a foothold, I could change password. I could create a new user. I could open a port, set up a shell, a bind shell, reverse shell, whatever the case may be. But just using find, it's going to be a little less noisy. If you're actually doing some kind of pen testing, and you didn't want to be too obvious and let people know that you're doing something, just using find in this case by itself without establishing some kind of long-term foothold is probably the better way, just because if you go changing passwords or making new users, there's going to be logs created, and that can be a bit noisy. All right, so this is the flag old school. Called it that because a set UID is pretty old school when it comes to CTFs. This is like privilege escalation 101. All right, now let's see what else is in Traversal directory. Okay, we have this thing called get credentials. So since we have a get repo or a clone of a get repo in Traversal directory, he's logged into get from this system. He's done a clone. He may have done some additional commands from here, but he also saved his credentials. So we have a password for Tyrell now. So we've got the format here. We've got HTTPS username, which is Tyrell, colon, then a password at evalcorp.com. All right, let's take that and see what we can do with it. All right, so the things we've discovered on EvalCorp, one of them was a mail server. So let's see if we can log in as Tyrell. No, don't save. Oh no, it didn't work. Okay, well, why didn't that work? Let's look at this password a little bit more closely. So it's the Git credentials are HTTP encoded. So when you're passing certain special characters over HTTP, um, they get encoded a certain way, and we can decode that pretty easily. So if you're not familiar with it, I'm using um, CyberChef. CyberChef is a great tool for decoding things or even decrypting things. It's got a bunch of different tools available over here, and you just start with your input, find what it is that you're trying to do. In this case, I'm going to do a URL decode, drag it over here. It's going to decode it, and yeah, sure enough, that %5e. So when you see something like that with a percent, and then there's some sort of hexadecimal, two hexadecimal numbers after that. So if you don't know hexadecimal, it's any number 0 through 9 and the letters A through F. Then that's going to be URL encoded, and this is the actual password for Tyrell. So let's try logging in as Tyrell again. Oh, look at that. Now we've got Tyrell's email. We can start looking through that. So let's see. Tyrell's got an email from Terry. He's bringing in a new consultant to help do some security stuff. Interesting. Let's see who this is. This Elliot guy. That looks interesting. Okay, so let's see. Tyrell sent. Okay, he's asking about sudo access. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so Elliot doesn't get sudo access, but Scott does. So we'll see if we can find out anything for Elliot and for Scott. So Scott has sudo access, at least somewhat, on the web server. Now, did we just log into the web server? No, actually what we're logged into is just a proxy server. If we look through our port scans, we can see there's actually some other servers on the network with port 80 open. So these are going to be some other targets that we can look at. So these are our other two targets we'll check out. And actually, this is 80 and 443, and the yeah, we'll look at that in a minute. What else? Let's see what email Tyrell has sent. Okay, so we set up a new account. Uh-oh, what's this? We've got another SSH key. Oh, and we've got even more data. So Scott has sent an email to Elliot welcoming him to EvalCorp. He's given him SSH access. We have a private IP address, so this isn't a server we can access over the public internet. We're going to have to do it from inside the network, but hey, we're already inside the network. But we have another SSH key. So now we've got initial access to one system. We've done a privilege escalation. We found a user's password, and now we have another SSH key that'll give us another level of access to another system. All right. I'm going to log out here. And I'm going to SSH back in. Now, what I want to do, I don't want to, I've got this new SSH key. I don't want to leave that on the, in Tyrell's directory or somewhere on the proxy server. That's the first server that we logged into. Partially in this situation, because it's a CTF, there's going to be other people on that server as well. We don't want to give anything away. So instead, I'm going to set up an SSH tunnel. Sorry, so we use the -L for the SSH command. We're going to give it a port. So this is going to be the local port that I'm going to connect to. So with an SSH tunnel, what I'm doing, I'm just, well, it's exactly what it says. I'm going to tunnel my traffic through SSH. So this is going to open port 2222 on my local system. So that's 127.0.0.1. That's my local host IP. And then it's going to forward all the traffic that locally I send to this port to this IP and port. So that's going to be this other IP, which we've identified as the web server, thanks to Tyrell's handy email. And then port 22 is SSH. So make that connection, and now I can start a new SSH connection. And I have copied and saved this other SSH key that I got from the email. So we will log in with that SSH key, and we're going to log in as Elliot. But since I'm going through my tunnel, I'm going to connect to 127.0.0.1, and then I'm going to give it the port 2222. And it works. We've got another flag. So now we've got access to a second system. What was the name of that flag? Drop it. Look at that. We are just filling up the board. Okay, so we have initial access. What have we learned about the system, this system so far? We know that Elliot, if you go back and look at the emails, Elliot wanted sudo access. Tyrell said no, but Scott has sudo access. All right. So let's see what we can find out about Scott. Let's take a quick look at the home directory. So this is interesting. Everybody else, their home directory has the permissions of the user. This is the user who owns it. This is the group. When you create a user in Linux, by default, it's going to make a group of the same name. And the permissions, so these are directories. We've got read, write, and execute for the user, but they're blank for everybody else. However, Scott's different. So Scott, his home directory is owned by user Scott, but the group is some group called Security Scan. And then we have read and write permissions, read, write, execute for Scott, but we've also got read and execute permissions for the group, which is Security Scan. So for execute permissions for a directory, in order to be able to access a directory in Linux, you have to have read and execute permissions. So if we can be the Security Scan group, we can see what's in Scott's home directory. So let's just take a look and see if we might know who's in that that group. So I'm going to use the get ent group. That's going to list out all the groups and who's in them. And we can see here we go at the very bottom, we have the Security Scan group, and it's Scott and Elliot. Well, we are already logged in as Elliot, so we should be able to see Scott's home directory. And sure enough, we do. And look at this. We've also got this another setuid file. So inside Scott's directory, we've got /home/Scott scan. It's got the setuid bit set. We can see that here, and it is owned by root. But let's take a little bit, take a minute to look at the source code for this. Now there's a couple ways I can do that. I can actually, using Tyrell's username and password, we could log into the get-t and look at it, but Scott's already got a copy of this here. So we can see in the port scan directory, there's the scan.c. So let's just look at this file and see what it does. Very simple. It's going to set UID to the user ID 1004 and the group ID to 1005. It does a sudo nmap. Results go to temp scan results. And then it does a cap, just a cat/temp/scan results. So who is this UID 1000 for? We can use get ent password or PASSWD to get a list of users. Let's pipe that to grep. So we can use the pipe to take a command, take that output and pass it to another command. So we're going to search for 1004, and we can see that that's actually Scott. So what this does is it will maybe owned by root, but looks like Scott didn't want to necessarily run this as root, so he's specifically forcing it to run as Scott. But then it calls sudo. So what happens when we run home Scott scan? All right, it asks for a sudo password. Don't know what Scott's password is yet, so that's not going to get us anywhere. But let's look what this does. So this last command, it just calls cat, but it's not calling a specific directory. Now we can actually do this with any of these commands because they're not using the full path. So when you just issue a command like this without having the full path to the command, that's because the command exists somewhere in your path. So as a user, there is a environmental variable $, all caps, path. So whenever I type a command, what the system's going to do is it's going to check, it's going to look in each of these directories, starting from left to right. That's important. Starting from left to right, it's going to look in each of these directories and see if there's a command that exists in one of these that matches the command that I typed. So let's see, we can use which to see where cat is. Helps if I type it correctly. All right, so cat is in /user/bin/cat, and we can see that user bin is the second path there. Now, I can run scan as Elliot. I can run it. It sets the user ID to Scott, and it just calls cat without, specifying a path. So I can control the path of this command now. So when it's calling cat, I can have it call anything I want. Now, in this case, what I've done, I think I put it in var temp, or was it just temp? Yeah, there we go. So what I've done is in temp, I've just made my own command called cat. And let's cat. All it does is it calls bin bash. So now what I can do, I can change my, again, since I'm doing this all as Elliot, I have control over my own path and all my own personal user variables. So I can do path equals, let's do /temp, and then we'll, we want to keep our old path in there. But we're putting temp at the beginning of the path now. So now if I do echo path, we can see that temp is the first place that it checks whenever I run a command. So what it's going to do when I now run home Scott scan, so it's going to try to do the whole sudo thing. Again, I don't have Scott's password. I don't know what that is. I'm just going to enter a blank password. But once it's done with that, it runs cat. But since I've changed the path, it's using the cat that I made, and it's doing it as Scott. And now I am Scott. So it's called bin bash as Scott, and I have access as Scott. So let's take a look at Scott's home directory. We've got another flag. Where am I? Oh, yeah, sorry, I changed my path and I set something else up as cat, so I kind of screwed myself there. But I can always go and call cat directly. Okay. Make sure I'm in the right directory. I am. Oh, okay. There's no flag here. That makes sense. All right. Okay, so there's no flag for Scott. Interesting. Well, I guess we'll find out if there just wasn't one or if it got removed somehow. But we'll continue. All right, so we know that Scott has sudo access, right? I'm going to try to run sudo. Let's just do a sudo su. So this is going to try to make myself free. All right, it's asking for a password. I don't know what the password is. Let's see if we can try some other commands to see if Scott can do some things as root without a password. Actually, he can. He can do sudo ls, so that's going to be useful. And now there's a number of things we can do with sudo, and one of them, there's something called LD preload. So LD preload, it allows you to load a library, a shared object or shared library before running the command with a certain flag. So you do sudo LD preload and then the command. Now I've already put this on the system to save time, but there is this so this shell.c that we've added. So this is going to unset LD preload and going to set my user as 0. User ID 0 is going to be root, and then we're going to call bin sh, or we can do bin bash or whatever. So again, this is just another in C, very similar to what Scott was doing with the scan. We're setting the user ID and then we're executing a command. But in this case, the command is just running the shell. So we can do a sudo. Let's see. Remember it's just LD underscore preload equals, we've got home, Scott, and then I've compiled this to shell.so. We'll run ls because we've discovered that Scott can run ls with sudo. And now let's see, who am I? I am root. So now we've done our privilege escalation all the way through and we have root level access. All right, let's see what's in the root directory. We've got a flag. We also got this passwords.zip, so that'll be useful. Let's check out that flag. Okay, sorry about that. Wrong paths here. All right, are we having fun yet? We've got root on the web server. So now we've got two systems. We've gotten all the way to root on. All right, what have we got left to do? So we've got Mysql and mail. I'll talk about those in a few minutes. We've got Scott and Sharon on the web server, this PGP decrypt. We've got an onion site. So there's still some other things to find. So we've gotten quite a lot far along. We've gotten two systems we have root access on. So there's a lot we could do if we had access to this network. You know, there's a lot of things here, but let's just continue with the challenges. So something else that was in roots directory, there's a passwords.zip. So let's take a look at that. I believe I've already copied that to Elliot's directory. Yeah, I have. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna download that to my my Kali box. So we can use SCP. So SCP is just CP but over SSH. So CP is just a copy command in Linux. So I'm going to be able to copy a file over SSH. It's a quick, easy way if you've got SSH access to copy a file. Cigar is almost done. get that burning again. All right, so we need to, let's see, specify our port. We are, again, using the Elliott key, and we want to copy from, so we're going to directory, we've got Elliott 127001, and we are copying the file home Elliott, passwords.zip, and then I'm just, the destination dot just means my current working directory. Okay, it's a capital P with SCP. There we go. All right, so it copies it. Now I've got passwords.zip. All right, now we can try to unzip this, but it needs a password. So we need a password to get our passwords. So to get that, there's a few ways we can do it. I'm going to just try fcrack. So fcrack zip should come with Kali. If you don't, I don't remember if it comes on the default install or not. I think I had to install it just using apt. So as root, we're using sudo apt install fcrack zip should get you fcrack zip. We are going to do the -d to decrypt, and then we're going to give it a password list. So -p and a list. Now, this is, if you've used Kali, if you've tried doing any brute forcing on Kali, you're probably familiar with this list. This RockU list is a real common one. It's a very large list of just a whole lot of passwords, a whole lot of default passwords, a lot of commonly used passwords. Use that for a lot of things. So that's the password list we're going to pass. This is the file that we're going to decrypt, and then we're going to unzip it. All right, so let's run that. Now, I already ran this before, and fcrack zip does keep a cache, so we've got our password here. And then I've told it to go ahead and unzip the file. So we have a file called passwords. So now we've got some passwords. We already knew Tyrell's password, but now we have Scott and Sharon as well. So there were some other flags. We already have this one. We could have used it before, but we've got Tyrell and Sharon. So there's some more flags we can throw up in the CTFD. Get all them points. All right, Tyrell and Sharon. And then a couple other, we also have Scott, although that's not a flag, that's still going to be a password that will be useful to us. All right, so the systems we found that might use passwords, one of them is going to be mail, and there's been interesting things in mail. So let's check these out. Let's log in as Sharon. Let's see. Oh, we have one email from Elliott sending her to an Onion site, and we've got a GPG file here. Now, I fucked up. After the CTF, I actually destroyed the server. So I did go ahead and set something back up, but I don't have the original files or the original content. So I won't go all the way through the end for this challenge because I don't have the original stuff. Apologize for that, but I'll show you how to get what you needed to get onto this last server. So, or sorry, it's not the last one. We still have the zone minder and the web server to look at. So we've got a .onion site. .onion, this is going to be something you can only access over Tor. This is a Tor hidden service. Let's pull up our Tor browser. Let's see, there should be a Tor browser in here, right? Yeah, I actually don't remember if Tor browser is even installed on here. Let's Nope, it's not even installed. All right, let's go ahead and install that. There we go. For some reason, some of the keys on my keyboard seem to stick. The T and the E in particular. Get the full package name. All right, that'll take a minute to install. And while that's doing that, let's also check out Scott's email. Scott was the other user that we have password for. All right, so we already kind of knew about this, that Elliot wanted Scott to do a port scan. We already looked at all of that. Oh, yeah, so, all right, Scott had his password reset, but hey, we already have his password reset. But oh, look, it's the same password as the camera system. So what is the camera system, huh? What do you think that might be? Well, if you remember, this ZoneMinder. Now, while the username Scott doesn't work, you can log in as user admin with Scott's password, and that gets you into ZoneMinder. So, all right, so we've got two things going here. Let's see, where did I have that terminal? All right, we've got the Tor browser. There we go. All right, well, Tor's getting set up. So with this particular version of ZoneMinder, I mentioned there are a couple of published vulnerabilities. And this is something you would just need, do some Googling, look around. We've got ZoneMinder version 1.30.0, and there's actually a number of vulnerabilities that are listed for this online. A number of actually published CVEs. All right, let's get Tor connecting. So one of them is a Sql injection. So for this particular version of ZoneMinder, there's a Sql injection. It's been doing a post using the limit field and a little more Googling, and you'll actually find that specifically what this vulnerability is for the log. So we pull up the log here, and you can see this. All right, so this is the ZoneMinder log. Now we've done some Googling, we've done some research. We know there's a SQL injection vulnerability there. So let's see what we can do with that. Let's go ahead and fire up Burp so we can gather some. It's easier in Burp to gather some details about our connection, about what's happening at the HTTP level, and figure out what parameters we're going to use to attack this specific SQL injection attack. All right, and while that's happening, so like I said, I don't have the original Onion site just because I destroyed the server after the CTF. My bad. But I did create a new server running the same software, and it's got a new Onion site. All right, so we've got just Apache Debian, and I gave everybody a clue. And this is something you could have done some directory busting to try to figure out. But running over Tor, it would take a long time. So if you know anything about Tor, you should know that since it is routing your traffic through multiple hosts around the internet in order to anonymize your traffic, it can be slow. But I told everybody, and if you were following along in Discord, that it's running Bloodit, Bludit, which is a file-based CMS. And so we can pull that up. All right, and it's actually blank again because I don't have the original site. I didn't rebuild the whole thing. But yeah, bloodit/admin will take you to the login page. And if we had a login page, then you could go for there. Now, what was originally on that site was an image, and it was this image. Now, you may have seen this image before because it was also the image that was used in our instructions. However, if we compare this image to the one that was on the Tor site, we actually can see there's a difference between those. So let's see, I put them on my desktop. All right, so there's a slight difference. This new image is a little bit longer. It's got a few more bytes. Let's see what's in this image. So this is something that's using some Stego. It's super basic. So we're going to use strings. Strings will read through a file and pull out any ASCII characters. So if I just use strings to see what's in that, we get the normal sort of encoding stuff we see normally. But oh, there's this. This looks like base 64. Let's copy that. We can take that to our handy dandy cyber chef, and we can do some base 64 decoding. Oh, but that's not really giving us anything useful. So let's see what else we can do with that. A common thing that I guess encryption scheme that is often used in CTFs really doesn't have much use outside of CTFs, honestly. Maybe a few, some malware and some other things might use it for some obfuscation, but ROT13 is just a simple Caesar cipher, which just rotates the alphabet by 13 characters. So we can try that. Let's ROT13 and then base 64, and hey, look at that. So we have a PGP message. So PGP, it is it's a program for encrypting data. You can use it to encrypt messages. You can use it for signing, using your key to sign messages, sign your email. There's a lot of things you can do with that. But so far, what we have a PGP encrypted message. We have a PGP public key that Elliot had shared with us. So now if we want to decrypt this, what we're going to need is a private key. And unfortunately, that's the bit that I lost when I destroyed the server. I apparently didn't back it up anywhere. But I'll show you how we could have found it. So again, if you do some Googling around and look for some vulnerabilities for Bloodit, and I didn't put, this is one I didn't finish getting all together. But there is I didn't finish rebuilding anyway. There is a remote command execution vulnerability for Bloodit. There's a couple things. One, so it does have some brute force protection, but there is a way around that. And let's see. No, I didn't use SOC++ for the base 64. I used CyberChef. Yeah, remote command execution. I think this is the one. There's actually quite a few as you go back. I believe this is an older version, so maybe this is the one. So there's an exploit DB script here for arbitrary file upload. Yeah, I think this is it. So as an admin, you can you can create new pages. You can do things like if you want to, since it is a CMS, you want to make a page and add an image to it. You should be able to upload images through the admin console. But this particular version of Bloodit has a vulnerability that will allow you to upload anything, an image or not. And so with that, you can actually upload a PHP shell, which is what this POC does. It'll upload a PHP shell, and that will let you, then explore the file system. And actually, just one directory above the web directory that the website was on, there was the private key, and that's how you would have been able to decrypt that file, or that message rather. But to do that, you have to be admin. So how do we get to be admin? Well, there was another. Let's see if this is one. I don't think that's it. Somebody had mentioned brute force bypass, and I'm not going to spend a few minutes to have you guys watching me Google, but if you do some Googling around for Bloodit, eventually you will find this. So someone wrote an actual Python script for bypassing the brute force detection. So now if we just tried to brute force the site, now I think some of you may have found this, but since it's running over Tor, you couldn't just run this script, and there were some issues with that, and I'll show you how to get around that in a minute. But if you try to brute force it just outright, you get, I think, 5 times, and then it's going to block you because it knows that you're brute forcing. However, there's this little thing called X forwarded for. So if you're using a proxy or a CDN or a load balancer on your network in front of your web server, that rewrites the IP header because it's going to terminate at the CDN or at the load balancer, and then the load balancer is going to then forward that traffic onto your web server. So if you're just looking at the IP address that the packets are coming from, the web server is going to think they're all coming from the load balancer, and so it's hard to actually figure out where traffic's coming from. If you've worked as a security analyst, you've probably run into this where you've seen an attack, but because they're not using X forwarded for, you can't really identify where the attack came from because everything is coming from the load balancer. And so what you can do is you can configure your load balancer to pass an extra HTTP header. Depending on the load balancer, who makes it, there's different things you can use. There's X forwarded for and others. There's client IP. But essentially, it's just going to provide a new HTTP header that tells you where the original request came from. So because of that, and because of how that works, Bloodit, at least this particular version, you can pass it different field for X forwarded for, and it's going to think that every request is coming from a different IP. So if you keep rotating through new fields for X forwarded for, you can continue doing your brute force as long as you want, and it's never going to get detected as a brute force. Now in this script, they just made it simple. It's going to read a password list, try to log in with the user that you give it, and it's actually just taking the password and putting that in the X forwarded for header. Because there's really no checks or anything to make sure it's an IP address, so it doesn't really matter. All we need is a unique value each time. Now, but since we're doing this over Tor, we still have that problem of like this is only going to work if we can actually directly access that host, and this is where nobody was able to get this far during the 8 hours that we did the competition. But what we can do is we can wrap this in Tor socks. So let's see. I've got this saved over here. All right. Okay, so Tor socks. It's a command that you should get when you install Tor. It's basically just going to wrap the rest of this process that it's going to run, and all the network traffic is going through this Tor socks proxy. So I mean, we could go through and you have Tor running. Tor acts as a socks proxy, We could go through and manually configure the script, but this is just going to make it a lot easier. Now, again, it's going to be slow. So I've made a shorter password list. I think I told you guys it was near the top of RockU. Also, one thing about this Python script, it actually tries to load the entire password list you pass it into a list. That was a list or a dictionary. I don't remember. I'll have to, you can look at that. But so if you just pass RockU to it, it actually run out of memory and it crashes. But I did tell you it was near the top, so I took the top, I think, top 30 passwords from RockU and sent that to this list that we're now running through now. All right, so we'll let that run. And meanwhile, back on ZoneMinder, all right, so I fired up burp. I've got burp configured, or we're going to use the browser built into burp. So burp is a very useful tool for doing some web exploitation, and with the browser built into it, essentially burp is going to act as its own proxy, and all the web traffic that you pass through the burp proxy, you can manually configure your browser to proxy everything through burp, but you can use the built-in browser. It's already configured. There's nothing else to do, and all the traffic that then you do in this web browser is going to be recorded in burp, and you can examine all the requests that you send. So let's do security.evalcorp.com. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, so we figured out earlier that the login for this was Scott's password. So we use admin, and we'll use Scott's password here. We've logged in. All right, we're getting close to finishing up here. All right, and the SQL injection was in the log. So I'll go and click on that so we can get this request as well. Okay, now let's go back to burp. Let's take a look at what we've collected for security.evalcorp.com. All right, here we go. Here, let's see, there's the get. Let me sort these by time. This is the most recent request that we made. So this is the HTTP request for the log. So it's a post. So we're doing a post through index.php. These are the parameters that are being passed to post. So we're doing a view request of log, task is query, and if you remember from the CVE, the injection was done through this limit field. Also, if we go back and look at this version of ZoneMinder, it had another vulnerability where it uses the same session key once you're logged in. So essentially, it allows for sidejacking attacks. If I can capture this from an admin who's logged in, I don't even need the password. I can just use the same session ID and have access as that person who was logged in. So now I've got my everything I need to start with the SQL injection. So let's save this command just to save time. I need to change the session ID. But while we're doing that, just real quick what we're doing. So we've got SQL map. Using that for the SQL injection. -u is going to be the URL that we're going to hit. So the URL is just security.evalcorp.com/index.php, because that's what we saw in the request. The --data. So --data in SQL map tells it that you're sending a post request as opposed to a get request, and then this is the data that we're sending. So this is that request that we saw. So we've got the view equals request, request equals log, task equals query, and limit equals 100. So again, this is the field according to the CVE that is injectable. I'm passing the cookie, so I need to go back and get that session ID. All right, so there's the cookie. The level and risk, that's basically just telling SQL Map what techniques to actually try. Essentially, the higher level, the noisier it's going to be, the more risky it's going to be, but the more things it's going to try. Now, I already know which field is injectable, so I'm going to tell it the parameter to try to inject to is limit. Also, again, if you do some more research on that particular vulnerability, it tells you that it's using stacked queries. So this is where you have a query essentially inside of a query. That's the method that can be used to inject it. Again, to save time, I already know that my database management system is MySQL. So it is using some blind SQL injection. So with blind SQL injection, with a standard SQL injection, you send a query to a website and it returns data that's going to be from your query. With blind SQL injection, you don't actually get the data back, but what you can do is you can send a query that says, if select benchmark 15,000 or delay 15 seconds if the first column of the first letter in the first column of the first variable is equal to A. And then if the second one is equal to B, or sorry, if the first one's equal to B, and so on. So it's only going to do the wait 15 seconds if the value is true. So you have to flood the server with all these requests if the first letter is A, if the first letter is B, if the first letter is C. Whenever it's false, you should get the request back right away within a few milliseconds or a second or two, depending on the server's performance and what kind of delays you might have. But if the value is true, then it's going to wait for 15 seconds. So it's really obvious, the difference between a false return and a successful return. I went ahead and passed it a user agent, and then I'm just going to try to extract the users. Now, I've already run this. SQL Maps saved it. Sorry, that is users, not user. So it's going to give me back the data. Now, when running this originally, it took a couple hours to get this data back. So, doing this live during the CTF would have taken a long time. However, at least to get all the data that you need. In fact, it probably would have taken several days, maybe even weeks to get all the data, because what we're actually looking for here is this particular flag. It is this PII. So there's some PII saved somewhere. So what is Susan's social security number? There is another database on this system, and I think I've already extracted those. Let's see. But there's another database called customers, and if we pull all the data down from customers, it's got PII in it. So there's social security numbers, account numbers, that sort of thing. Again, it would have taken a very long time if we were doing this live just using the SQL injection attack. But something else you might have noticed. When I looked at the users, so there was, these are the users. Now, for MySQL, users are identified by username and the host that's allowed to connect to them. So this 192.168.0.70, that's actually the ZoneMinder server that I'm currently connected to. But there's also root at, and then this %, this is a wildcard. So root can connect from any host. So if we can get this root password for MySQL, we can actually connect to the MySQL database from any other system in the same network. So again, doing some more Googling and looking up ZoneMinder and some of the vulnerabilities. And I don't remember if I pulled this one up somewhere or not. All right, well, there's another vulnerability for this particular version of ZoneMinder where you can do directory traversal. Let's see, is that in here? There's some. Yeah, there's a lot of vulnerabilities listed here for this particular version of ZoneMinder. I thought I had that one pulled up, but at any rate, yeah, here it is, directory traversal. So with this particular path, there is another command, it's view file path, and it'll let you just read any system that the web server has access to. Now, the web server is not running as root, so one of the things that you might look for is Etsy shadow to try to find password hashes and decrypt it. But since we're using ZoneMinder, what we can also do is look for the ZoneMinder config file. So let's just pull that up. Now, this would take a little bit of brute forcing and some attempting to find it, but with this path, so again, this is that vulnerability. So we're calling it index.php, view equals file, and path equals, and then we just supply a path. So we're doing all this dot slash to go back to the root of the file system. Then we're looking in Etsy, and we're pulling up vm.conf. And sure enough, there it is. And look at this. We've got database password equals, we've got a database password, and look, it's actually using user root. So now we have the password for root as MySQL. So not necessarily the root password to get root access to this file system, but we can access the MySQL server. All right. Oh, and look, now our TorSox brute force is done, and we found the password is Anthony. So again, I haven't, I didn't configure all of this, so that this isn't going to work, but we can log in. To blood it. Yeah, if you remember that was going on. And then from there, we can use that other exploit that we were looking at, and then we could get the PGP key once we saw the file system, if I still had all that set up. But I don't, so just take my word for it. It works. All right, now we've, okay, so we've got the MySQL user and password. I'm going to go ahead and log in, back into the web server. Go. All right, so what is that? It should be here. There we go. There's the IP address for the web server, for the MySQL server. So I'm going to use MySQL command. We'll connect to that host. We'll use the user root. Tell it to. Oh, okay. I guess MySQL's not on that system. Okay. All right. I could have sworn that it was, but we can always. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Typo. There we go. Yeah. All right. And where was that password? There we go. Password. So now I am in SQL. Let's see what databases we have. All right, let's use the database customers. Full typos today. All right, let's see what tables are in this database. Let's see what this database looks like. Oops. Okay, let's describe. All right, so we've got first name, last name, and yeah, social security number. That's what the flag was looking for. So let's just select social security number. Let's do first name, last name, and social security number from copy and paste so I do fewer typos. Where first name equals, let's see, what was the flag looking for? All right, Susan. So let's see if we can do that. So the first name equals Susan. Oh, look at that. We have a social security number. Let's see if this works. There we go. We've got the PII flag. All right. What was this? Okay. Again, that was one. There would have been a dot flag in the actually that was in the web directory. So if you got to the Onion site and just looked for dot flag, you would have found that flag. Again, I don't have that, but that's where you would have gotten this particular flag. The PGP decrypt. Once you got that private key, you could have decrypted that. So we've got MySQL root, Mel root, and then we've got Sharon and Scott SMTP. So for these last two, for these two, all we need to do is SSH into the SMTP server with the passwords that we have, and then those flags would have been in their directories. Now, Mel root and MySQL root. So to be perfectly honest, I wasn't necessarily trolling. I don't have a way of getting those. Not necessarily. Again, I wasn't necessarily trying to troll anyone, but I just thought, if somebody did find a way to get root, they deserve to get points. So that's why I added those flags there. I will say that the version of postfix running on the web server or the mail server does have a published vulnerability, although I don't think it works on that particular server. You might have been able to do something with that. I haven't necessarily found a way. I don't think it's configured for it to work, but it would have been a nice rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, if you did find it, you would have got some Uber points for that. But it's not something that I currently know a way to actually get root on those. We can take a look at Sharon and Scott real quick. So we did find when we were doing Nmap, or actually we should be able to just SSH as, hold on, let's get this password again. So SSH Sharon at smtp.evalcorp.com. And it should work. There we go. And there's a flag. All right, and Scott, it would have been the exact same thing. So you would have got Scott's password. Now this is the mail server. So if you're able to get in and find a privilege escalation, it would be something that's unpublished and not something that I necessarily configured for. But hey, if you got it, you deserve the points. And that's pretty much it for all of the network challenges. Excuse me. So that's all I'm going to go through today. Now, while we were looking around on the system, when we looked at the Nmap, there was also an NFS server, and you could have mounted that NFS mount. And there was just a number of other challenges, kind of offline challenges that you could do from that. There was some cryptography and some other things. I'm going to be doing this again in 2 weeks, and my plan is every other Saturday um, at 10 a.m. I'm going to be doing this, and in 2 weeks, Ross, the Disturbed Gender or Ginger, I think he was in Discord, he set up most of these challenges, and he's going to join me, and we're going to go through these NFS challenges and take a look at those. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. The video for this should be saved and archived on Twitch. I'm probably going to eventually set up YouTube and maybe put some of those on there as well. But so the plans going forward, again, I'm going to do this every other weekend. Going to be doing some more CTF stuff. Next time Ross is joining. After that, the next 2 weeks later, I'm going to be going back and looking at some other CTFs I've done earlier this year. So I did Cyber Trifecta back in, I think it was August. And that was actually a 3-day long event. So there was a number of servers. We actually put together a fake botnet. And so we're going to look at some of the code around that, look at those challenges. I've got Jason from CNWR. He was actually the first place winner from Cyber Trifecta. He's going to join me, and we're going to look at some crack news that we put together for Cyber Trifecta. And then 2 weeks after that, Taylor Green from Perch Security, he's going to join me. He's been doing some crack news. We're gonna have some of those available as well. So I'm before those future episodes where we're looking at crack news, I'm going to make those available at bamctf.com. That's not up yet. I've registered the domain, but I haven't set the site up yet. But I'm going to make those challenges available so you can download them and play with them a week before we actually go through and do a walkthrough of each of those crack news. And that's going to be in like 6 weeks from now. And then my plan is in about 2 months, I'm actually going to put together another CTF, probably not as big a scale, just sort of a mini CTF, and we'll live stream through that whole thing. So just watch for updates on that. Follow me on Twitter. It's at BAMCTF for any updates and additional things we're going to be doing. So I'm going to be doing more walkthroughs, tutorials, and challenges and competitions and all that stuff. Hopefully we can have a lot of fun with all that stuff. So again, thanks everybody for joining. And if you were part of the BSides Houston CTF, also want to thank our sponsors for that. No Starch Press, they provided some of the prizes, which if you haven't got those yet, Peter is supposed to be contacting you. So Peter was one of the organizers for BSides Houston. He's got everybody's info. We've got some additional swag provided by our other sponsor, which is my employer, Perch Security. They've provided some swag that we're going to be sending out as well. So Peter's working on getting all that together, and he should be contacting everyone very soon. So expect an email from Peter from the BSides Houston email address. And I think that does it for now. If you guys have any other content you want me to take a look at, or other competitions or anything, just hit me up on Twitter. I'll look at your responses, and we'll use that to sort of build up what I do in the future. So thanks again, and I will see you guys in about 2 weeks.